trial and error. That's why I say I talk about my successes and my failures, and I still every day have successes and failures.
Yep.
This year, May of this year, will mark 30 years in my caregiving process. I graduated
Wow.
in 90. So this is my 30th year in caregiving, and so in professional caregiving. And so I still not every day, maybe still, but certainly every week, I make assumptions that I think based on what happened in this situation, maybe it would work in this situation, and it doesn't. But what I also remember is failure is a bruise. It's not a
Hmm.
tattoo, right?
I
Failure is
love
a
that.
bruise, not a tattoo. And so you have another chance in the next moment or the next morning or the next month to do something different than you did and see if it works then. It is the intention that matters.
Right.
It is that you are getting up every day and trying your best and trying to provide what you can provide as a caregiver. And if it gets to where nothing you are doing is working, it's okay to look for professional help and maybe a care placement. You are still a caregiver.
I am on a mission to strengthen, empower, encourage, and inspire caregivers to keep going, keep pushing, keep loving, and by all means to keep caring. Welcome and thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner podcast. I am your host, Priscilla Jean-Louis. Hello and welcome to My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner podcast. I am your host, Priscilla Jean-Louis. We are in Season 2, which I've chosen to theme Dear Future Dementia Caregiver. And let me push a quick pause right here before I go any further. If you haven't listened to episode 1, I do strongly encourage you to go back and take a listen to that first episode. You can listen right here on YouTube, on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And of course, you can listen to it on my website at www.PriscillaPriscillaJean-LOUIS /podcast. So that's Priscilla J. Jean-Louis. And you can find the podcast on there. And hey, while you're on there, do me a favor, whichever podcast or platform rather that you're listening on, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast so that you can get notifications whenever a new episode drops. And after you get done subscribing, do me a favor and go ahead and share it with a family member or friend, or especially somebody who you may know who is a caregiver. We want to go ahead and do as we say. We want to strengthen our caregivers. Our goal always is to encourage caregivers to keep going, keep moving, keep loving, keep pushing, and by all means to keep caring. All right. So I am super excited today to have my guest here on the podcast with me. And I want to just give a little bit background to who she is before I actually go into her introduction. I actually met her. I'm a believer in divine connections, and I do believe that this is one divine connection. And I met her, ironically, through reading her book. I was going through a period of time with my mom. My mom was going through a stage of about 2 weeks where her behaviors were just very erratic, something that I had not experienced. And so usually when something like that happens, I immediately kind of go and start researching, trying to find information on what to do, how to do it, how I can manage the behaviors, whatever it is I can find. And so in my search for some type of an answer, I actually ran across her book on Amazon. And usually with Amazon, I'll take and I'll download just enough to be able to read the information, see if I really want to purchase the book before I do. And I downloaded it and read it and was like, I have to have this book. And that book was so helpful to me at that particular time, it helped me to be able to maneuver through that time. And through that, she also has a Facebook platform that I immediately went and found and joined, and I've been there ever since. And, I just happened to reach out to her because she seemed like somebody that would be very open to it. And last year, when Kaylin did her Youth Care 2 movement, kicked it off, I reached out to her to see if she would be available and interested in coming and being the guest speaker for Kaylin's event. And she readily accepted. And that touched my heart beyond what I can imagine. And I found her to be very down to earth, very helpful. And so super excited to have her on the show. And I am talking about none other than Vicky Noland Finch, who is the best-selling author of Dementia with Grace. That is the name of the book, Dementia with Grace. And I'm going to throw a plug in for that as well. Going over to Amazon, find it on there. We'll talk about a little bit more. It is posted. If you're on YouTube viewing this, I do have copies of it posted right here on YouTube. But go on over to Amazon and make your purchase today. She has 2 editions of it, and I promise you it will be well worth your while. So just to give a little background on Vicky, Vicky is a certified dementia practitioner and a social worker with a Bachelor of Science degree in social work from the University of Montevallo. She's worked for over 2 decades in long-term care, serving the elderly population and their families. She has developed a framework, structure, and programming for multiple memory care units and the behavior management systems they employ. She actively consults with families and facilities, educates and trains caregivers, writes about her failures and successes in caregiving, and talks about dementia to any willing audience. Vicky has a deep desire to understand dementia more fully so she can translate that knowledge into helping people with dementia and their caregivers, both personally and professionally. Vicky is a small town girl who lives and works out of an 1892 farmhouse deep in the heart of Dixie. She has 1 daughter, a son-in-law, and the most beautiful grandbaby in the world. She has a ragdoll cat named Contessa who wanted to be listed last for effect. Welcome you all. My guest for today, Vicky Noland Finch. Vicky, thank you so much for joining me here on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I also believe in divine connection, and I am so excited for the opportunity to be with a lady who, as I've said, I believe to be a rock star in the caregiving world, not only to your 2 favorite girls, but to all the folks that are needing some guidance. And I just am so thankful that God is using you on this journey to be a lamppost. And I simply believe that, and I thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you. And Vicky, I wanted to bring you on because as I stated earlier, I do believe that, you too are a gem in this area of caregiving. And it could not have come for a better time for me. And joining the Facebook group has been so rewarding, just being there. And I'll be honest as well. When I joined the group, I was at a place too of being somewhat overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And, being a caregiver of 2 is, you don't really hear of that often, but
Right.
it just happened to be my situation. And the title of your book, Dementia with Grace, that is the one thing that I hold on to and I believe in, the fact that God never places us in any situation, any place in life without giving us the grace for where we are. And so
Absolutely.
ironically, dementia with grace, and that is what I hold on to, that grace. And so when I joined the group, I was in a place where I was like, oh, this is a lot. This is becoming a lot. And just a different thing, especially more so with my mom, because her dementia is a lot more advanced. And so when I joined the group and I'm looking at, reading some of the posts that are in there, what I realized and what it did for me is it changed my entire perspective,
Yes.
because I realized that even being a caregiver of two, there are some people in the group who only has one, and their situation is so much different from mine.
Yes.
And it gave me such an appreciation to say, you know what? And I started saying, you know what? I really I don't have it bad. you know, and
Right.
and I know that you found that a lot, just in the group.
Yes, and I have that same comment so often that it is so overwhelming at first, and then they read all of these stories, and because people are on there 24 hours a day, writing or ranting sometimes, just commiserating sometimes, and they are at the end of their rope, and then they realize that all of these people are somewhere on their journey, maybe not at the end of their rope, but they are certainly hanging on somewhere, and it kind of gives them a different perspective. Exactly what you said is, that we're not alone in this. I'm not the only one in the world going through this. Even though you have one person with dementia, that's one person with dementia. Just like your two girls are two different people in two different stages, maybe two different areas. You know, doing two different things. So because you have a person with dementia, that just means you have one person with dementia, and everybody is different. I have a saying that we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat,
That's right.
and that makes a huge difference. But just to know that it's raining on somebody else makes you feel like, okay, I'm not alone, and there is that kind of you know that breath that you can take to say, okay, these people are doing it, I can do it. And there's a person here, there are other moderators that help me, that are also experts in the field, and there's always somebody that I can lean on and ask a question of, and you know that's the reason that I started the Facebook group. I had to have help on my journey of epilepsy, and I had turned to Facebook because there was nobody else around me. I had everybody that loved me and wanted to help me, but they did not know what it was to have epilepsy. They did
Mhm.
not know what it was to have a seizure. I went onto Facebook and found a group that did know what that storm felt like. And it gave me such strength and fresh perspective that I thought, well, I'm going to start a Facebook group, and I did. And so it's just been, God has just used it in such a way that it's still, it blows my mind every day. It really does. Humbles me.
I'm sure it does. And I know that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Like, when you first started, did you even think that it would grow and be as large as it is right now?
No, no. I just thought, I had to medically retire from actually being, a day in, day out facility social worker. And then I was a director of a unit, of a memory care unit. And I had to physically, medically retire. And then I was at home and I thought, what am I going to do? This can't be the end of my journey in caregiving, because I still have so much passion and so much education and so much that surely God is not going to waste the investment that
Hmm.
He's made in me and that I have in turn made into His people. That won't, God will not allow that. He says what He has begun, He
Yeah,
will continue. He
he's
says
going to
that,
finish it. Yeah.
and so I knew that. So I asked for work for my hands, and as he was healing me and giving me guidance on my seizure journey, I thought, well, I've got a computer and I have Facebook and I could do this for other people. And so I started the Facebook group first, I had all of my cousins and sister and brother, and we just started like that. People in my hometown, and then it just grew and grew and grew, and they wanted me to write everything down in a book, and I thought, I don't know how to write a book. I have no idea how to write a book. Um, and what I was teaching this, but it wasn't in this. It wasn't dementia with grace, the GRACE.
Mm-hmm.
That ended up being a double entendre, which it means gather important details, routine or reminisce, assess, calm, or excite. But it absolutely also means dementia with grace, giving
Yeah.
grace to others, giving grace to yourself, receiving grace, leaning on God's grace, all of that. And so then I started the YouTube channel because I was answering the same questions over and over, and I thought I could duplicate my work, by because I still have seizures every week. I'm going into my 15th year of my seizure disorder, and I've not gone more than 17 days without a seizure in the last 14 and a half years. And so I still struggle with seizures weekly. And so I had to figure out a way to multiply my efforts. And so that's why I got on YouTube. And now it's an award-winning YouTube channel.
It is.
It's and I am just in the corner of my little house, doing so much more for God's kingdom than I could have ever done in my 40-hour a week job, you know. And I had no idea, Priscilla, that I knew God could do it because I know I serve a big old God,
Yes.
but I had no idea what He would do with me and for me and through me in the lives of dementia caregivers. And so this is not about me. It really is not. It really is not. I'm the hammer. I'm just a tool in the toolbox. You know, as are you, as are other experts, as Tipa Snow and Dr. Potts and so many other people that are in the fight trying to help in their little way. So I couldn't be more humbled to be used. And I just get up every day and try to do what I can that day, and
Yep.
then let God multiply the efforts.
And that's all you can do. And I love that because God will use those situations that, we think are so like, why did this happen?
Yeah,
He'll take that and he'll use it. And I'm just gonna just a little bit because it's all about who I am. And so in Bible study, just about 3 weeks ago, one of our elders was teaching. And one of the things that he said that I never took into consideration until he said it and it sparked within me. He was talking about Paul and how Paul was in prison. And here he was in prison, but he was still encouraging other believers, encouraging. And so when we're in our own situations, we can't understand sometimes why things happen the way they are, but just sitting back, like you said, what am I going to do? God, I know you're not going to waste the investment that you put in. And when you make yourself available with the purest of intentions, he'll take and he'll do exactly what he's doing. And so, kudos to you. I absolutely love, and I find myself a lot of times in the group. I go through a lot and I pray for people because one of the things that I realize is that, and the reason why this podcast is going and, I share some of the things I share because people are struggling, some of them, with
yeah,
this.
yeah.
There's a lot that comes along with it that you really don't imagine. Some of the things I've
Right.
experienced is like, oh my gosh, and you can either take where you are and you can make the best of that situation, or you can allow it to beat you down and you become depressed. And I just choose to help people. I choose to use my situation. I'm an advocate as well because I want people to know what this looks like. I want people to be aware of the behaviors. I thought it was great as well. We talked back in November after I posted on the page, and I,
Mhm,
I appreciate even your approach. That's one of the things I've grown to love about you without knowing you. Just what I do know, I've been so appreciative to it because you could have come a totally different way, but you saw the video and you messaged me about it, and then you said, "Hey, can we talk?"
mhm.
And we pulled up, we talked, and we both got a greater understanding and realized that what, there's nothing bad about it, and you appreciate that because when you're in these modes, it's not, as I stated and shared with you when we talked, there's nothing that I'll ever do intentionally that would bring shame or anything on my mom and my grandmother.
That's right.
But at the same time, you want people to understand what this disease looks like.
Right.
I call
Right.
it cruel, I call it nasty, I call it mean, I call it a lot of things. And then I'm learning as well to watch what I call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to watch what I call it sometimes too, because you have to be careful definitely with your words, but just being able to be there for people in this situation, because it's hard. That's the
Mhm,
bottom line. I don't try to fake it. I don't try
mhm.
to make it seem like reality is the grace of God is what causes me to continue day by day, moment by moment.
Right.
But there are days that are absolutely tough. And
Yes.
I know that you have seen it. If I'm not mistaken, you yourself started as a caregiver and you started as a youth caregiver.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to talk a bit about that, just your passion, because in your book, when you're reading your book, I could feel your passion in there. One of the
Mm.
things, before I go to that point, one of the things that really helped me in the book, when you talked about how the man would get up under his bed
Mhm.
at a certain point in the day, or the lady would get up and try to go out with the people during the day. I never really considered the things that you said, because I think the man, you found out, or they found out at a later point, that he was an aircraft mechanic
Mhm.
and
Yes.
he would have to go up under the aircraft to fix it. And so at a certain point in the day, he would go up under his bed.
Mhm. When he was sundowning, he would.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so all of that was so interesting to me, and it opened my eyes to really think about and consider, certain points in my day, or certain points with my mom when she will get up and do certain things.
Mhm.
Usually for us, it's around about 5 o'clock, literally about 5 o'clock every day. She's up and she's moving and she's most active at
Mhm.
that particular time of day.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, even with what you talk about, and I'm not going to go into every detail of the book because I want people to go buy it. I want them
Yes.
to know enough
Yes.
that they will
Yes.
go and get it and just know that it's going to help you. If you are a dementia caregiver, I want you to go get both editions of that book. Okay. Um, but your passion for dementia care, where did that begin for you?
Well, I was not a dementia caregiver when I was a youth, but we did have my grandmother who had, diabetes and some other comorbidities and had an amputation and could no longer live alone and had to live with us. I was 16 when she came to live with us, and when I went away to college, so she lived with us for 2 years. I went away to college, and she had to go into skilled nursing, a nursing home back then. That's what it was called. And what I saw there made me want to be a professional caregiver because at that point, it was 1988, Oprah 87, the Omnibus Reconciliation Act of 1987 set in motion all of the regulations that nursing homes still now, skilled nursing facilities still now operate under. All of the no chemical restraints, no physical restraints, daily activities, all of those things, none of that was in place when my grandmother was placed into a facility at 88. It had just started, and I saw some atrocious things. And I thought there has got to be a better way. And I prayed about it and eventually, found myself in the School of Social Work. I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. I just that didn't feel right. I didn't that just didn't ever sit right with me. Probably also because I couldn't pass chemistry hardly. But I found myself in the School of Social Work and found out there were nursing home social workers, and their job was to advocate for the residents. And I thought, well, there you go. I mean, that's what I want to do because I want to be their voice. I want to be the person that makes sure that they're getting their activities and they're getting their outside time and they're not being chemically or physically restrained, all of those things. So I started in a facility just as a facility social worker. And then some years later, they decided that they wanted to start a dementia unit. And I had always, if you couldn't find me, I was hanging out with the folks with dementia because that's
Okay.
who I loved. And my administrator and uppers came and said, would you be interested in opening a dementia unit here? And so I opened the first dementia unit in that county. And there it goes. I mean, they had facilities all over, and so they started using my activities and my behavior management system and all of that. Now, it was still in under construction because there was a lot that I had to learn. And having all of the dementia folks on one wing of the facility, that was in and of itself an experience. And
Yes, I'm sure.
absolutely having 21 folks in different, areas, different stages, different other comorbidities. It was interesting, but it was what I found was so interesting how important a routine was. How important it was to know about their background, not just a little bit of a one front and back of a social history, but a deep social history. That man, we had his social history, and we knew he had retired from one of the local plants, from one of the local tire making plants.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know. We had no idea that we just didn't know what that going under his bed was about. And I was thinking maybe he was afraid that he was trying to get under. And we talked to somebody that knew him in his earlier life and said, well, you know what? He did serve for a little while as an aircraft mechanic. And we were like, well, I just wonder if that's what he's doing. And we still don't know that that's what he's doing, or he was doing, but it did inform our care planning as to
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's what he needs. And so then we got him like an adult tinker toy type setup where our maintenance people made it. There was nothing to order at that time. They put together the whole thing, the whole board, and he would just play with it. He would tinker with it. So we met his need of being useful
Mm-hmm.
from where he was in his life. He must, in his own life, maybe have been in his 20s, where he didn't remember the tire plant anymore, but maybe he remembered that part of his life where he was a mechanic. So trial and error. That's why I say I talk about my successes and my failures, and I still every day have successes and failures.
Yep.
This year, May of this year, will mark 30 years in my caregiving process. I graduated
Wow.
in 90. So this is my 30th year in caregiving, and so in professional caregiving. And so I still not every day, maybe still, but certainly every week, I make assumptions that I think based on what happened in this situation, maybe it would work in this situation, and it doesn't. But what I also remember is failure is a bruise. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
tattoo, right?
I
Failure is
love
a
that.
bruise, not a tattoo. And so you have another chance in the next moment or the next morning or the next month to do something different than you did and see if it works then. It is the intention that matters.
Right.
It is that you are getting up every day and trying your best. And trying to provide what you can provide as a caregiver. And if it gets to where nothing you are doing is working, it's okay to look for professional help and maybe a care placement. You are still a caregiver if you have to, if you have to, um, the word's leaving me. That's part of my wonky hippocampus in my
Yeah.
epilepsy that does that to me. If you have to, outsource, there's the word. If you have to outsource caregiving, you are still the advocate for that person. You are still making caregiving choices for that person. So anyway, it's
And I think that's important, especially people like myself. And I like to have honest moments, right? And so when you say that, you know, being able to make that decision, sometimes that can be really, really hard. And I
mhm,
think, we have to have that conversation too at a different point for people to understand that even if you do have to outsource and make that decision, it really is okay because it can be a struggle.
absolutely.
I know, like for me, one thing my mom has always said prior to, the diagnosis, just in growing up, she never ever wanted to go in a nursing home. I mean,
Mhm,
she drilled that into me forever. I don't want to go. And so, now when you're faced with that and, you think about, because honestly, reality is you do think about it. You do think, am I really capable of giving the care, or am I giving the care that she needs? Does she need more care? Am I being selfish by
mhm,
keeping her with me when maybe she can get better care? You go through those phases.
absolutely. Mhm,
My grandmother's 98, right? And so that is a thought, like, well, yes, I want to make sure that she's cared for properly. And sometimes, especially now during COVID days and
mhm.
knowing there's so much shortage going on in the facilities, you want to make sure that they're getting the best care. But then you have to think too, at certain points, am I being selfish by not outsourcing?
Right.
And so it's a lot of thought sometimes that goes into it.
It
I'm
is.
still at a point where I can still handle it, but it doesn't mean that the questions don't come at some
Oh,
days. And I think that
absolutely.
that is important too, that people need to understand, like you said, it's still a part of caring.
Mhm.
It's
It
still a part.
absolutely is. And one of the things that I also bring to the table is having been a memory care director and knowing that side of it and knowing, when you leave the door, when you cross that threshold to go home, I know what you leave behind. And, um, I can shed some light on that. That is just like taking a baby to daycare sometimes, and you don't want to leave them because they're hanging onto your leg and all that kind of stuff. But it's really as soon as by the time you got to the car, they're down there playing with the Elmo and stuff. And so it's it really is like that a lot of times. Where it's out of sight, out of mind because it's
Yeah.
situational awareness and things like that. That you know as I teach in the book that memory is not just memory loss. Dementia is not just memory loss. It's other things. And so yeah, uh, it's it's so fascinating to me. I know that dementia is a horrible, terrible, awful, awful disease. Um, but it is so detailed and so deep that I don't know that we will find a cure in our lifetime. I don't know, but I do know that we know so much more than we did 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and um, that we understand the person better. That is one point that I want to make to these future dementia caregivers, is that we are taking care of people with dementia. We are people taking care of people with dementia. And I make that separation there because people can take care of other people. We do it all the time. We take care of our customers. We take care of our children. We take care of, our church members. We take care of, other people, our spouses. We just take care. We're caregivers. And we can do it. The difference in this is the dementia. And there are so many resources out there to help you understand dementia. I'm not the only resource. I certainly, buy my book, buy other books, join my Facebook group, join other Facebook groups, watch my YouTube channels, watch others, because there's so much out there, to educate yourself on. And the people that are on YouTube, that are on podcasts, that are on Facebook looking for information are wonderful caregivers. I never have to meet them, never have to meet them, never have to talk to them, never have to read an email. I know that they are wonderful people because they are seeking information about how to do their job better. So once you check that, okay, I'm a person, I'm taking care of a person. Okay, got that. Now I am understanding a little bit more about dementia. Check that box. And there you go. You're off to the races. And you're going to be able to be successful because you have a success mindset. And it's just that's the best perspective to have.
That's right. And the one thing that I always tell people is as long as you can keep in the forefront of your mind that it is not the person, the behaviors are not the person,
Right.
they are the behaviors. And so as long as you understand that it's not them, then you don't take out the emotion sometimes that you can feel. You don't take it out on them. You don't, does it get to be overwhelming at times? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been awakened to some things and I'm like, oh, but then you realize it's not them. This is not my mom. This is
Hmm.
not something that she would do, in a different state, in her normal state. And so you have to keep in the forefront of your mind that in addition to them being people, it is the disease, and it's not them. That helps me
Hmm.
consistently,
Hmm.
because you understand that and I tell people they don't change. I mean, people hate to come around and they
Hmm.
hate to um I don't want to say hate, but they don't come around
Right.
because they
They're
figure,
reluctant.
well, they're not going to remember me. They're not going to know who I am.
Hmm.
And for the ones that tell me, especially family members, I often let them know I live in the house with both of them, and my mom does not know who I am. She
Hmm.
literally thinks that I'm her mother. She thinks that Kaylin is her sister.
Yeah.
And most of the time she's calling Kaylin by my name. Now she calls my name all day,
Hmm.
every day, 100 times a day,
Yeah.
but she doesn't recognize me as her daughter. And so
Right.
to use that and say, well, she doesn't know who I am, but you can't forget who they are, and so,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know,
Hmm.
you have to still love them the same. They're the same person. They have feelings, they have emotions,
Right.
all of that. And so,
I have an entire playlist on my YouTube channel, "The Soul Remains," across all the stages, all the way down to stage 7, which is the last stage of the disease process. The soul remains. I know that. I believe it. I've experienced it with when I had a soul connection with people that had been in my facility and on my unit that I had known for years, and I had known them through the stages. And then they were down in the deeper stages. And I don't have much of a singing voice, but I do praise the Lord. And so I would go and I would put on lotion and sing, sing Peace of the Valley or something. And I could go in there at a bedside. It gives me absolute chill bumps. Um, and I could do our lotion. I always use Jergens original cherry scent, and I could do the lotion, and I could sing Peace in the Valley, and there would be a brightening, a recollection, a tear sometimes with people that their soul recognized my soul. And they wouldn't know who I was, but they recognized love. They recognized care. They recognized tenderness. They recognize the things that souls recognize.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have a name sometimes. It doesn't have the name of a person or maybe even the name of an emotion. It has a feeling. And, we talk about feelings, 99% of behaviors are because of an unmet need, and you figure out the feeling, you meet the need, and you solve the behavior. It is it's so organic to me, behavior management. I don't use medicine a lot. Obviously I can't prescribe medicine, but doctors look to me to say, what would you think? And and I say, let's try something different. Let's try something that we can reach deeper, and meet the need of the person. Let's see if we can make a soul connection and get down to the fear,
Mm-hmm.
get down to the anger, get down to the sadness, and see if we can, meet that need. And then maybe we won't need, a strong medicine that could cause a fall or deeper confusion or, something like that. I'm not totally against medicine. Medicine has its place. Absolutely has its place. But I don't like that to be our first go to.
Right.
Right.
Because some of those medicines can
Mhm.
really make them
They
like
can.
zombies.
They
They
can.
don't function well. And
And
I
they don't
totally
eat.
agree.
They don't eat. I mean, then they start to lose weight, which they can't afford because they're already, sometimes malnourished because they're not eating, or they, stumble and fall. It's, that's why benzodiazepines and some of the sleep medicines are contraindicated in the elderly because it tends not to put them all the way to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it makes them woozy. And then they would try to stand and walk and fall. And there's lots of hip fractures. And then, of course, that requires surgery, and anesthesia is an absolute anathema to dementia. So,
It is.
so you kind of get a ball rolling that you can't go back. So anyway, and some of those things can happen with or without
Right.
medication, but that's why I try to do behavior management because I believe that it absolutely can work, and that's why I wanted to. That's why I started the group. Then that led to the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel led to the book. And the first book, the pink book, I did not know what I was doing. I did not have an editor. I basically sent it to Amazon, and I mean, not this brusquely, but they sent me back an email basically saying, "What is this? Like, we cannot do anything with this, whatever you have sent us." And so I had to hire somebody to format my book. I just wrote down what I knew and put chapter titles on it.
Okay.
God gave me the Dementia with Grace and the gather important details, like how to put it into, an acronym like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just worked out. That just came to me in a dream, how God does things. And then I wrote it all down and all of that. And then the second book, I realized that in the first book, I was really coming at it too much from a facility medical standpoint because I had been in the medical model for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw what the knowledge gap was on the group, because I was teaching nurses and CNAs and administrators how to manage dementia behavior, so they already had a run up, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to what an infection looked like when somebody couldn't tell you that their ear was hurting or their throat was hurting, or somebody that was constipated when they couldn't tell you those kind of. They knew what factors to look for, and I didn't include a lot of stuff in the first book because I assumed that people knew more than they did. And so that, like, I thought that they knew the stages. I assumed that everybody knew all 7 stages.
Nope.
I just didn't know. I just didn't know. Again,
Right.
that's why I put it on the back of the book. I talk about my successes and my failures. And so I wrote the second edition, which has a lot of the same information as the first book, more fleshed out. So if you could only afford one book, get the white book. If you could only, and I know that there's people that are on a tight budget, and caregiving for someone with dementia is expensive.
Yeah.
So if you can only afford one book, get the white book, because it's really an expanded. a second edition. It's an expanded book. But either book would work. The
Yep, and I highly recommend it. Highly. It comes
Thank
highly recommended. I promise you, if you are in need, you want to get a better grip on what dementia caregiving is and just the different, I don't want to say what to expect, but what to expect, how to handle it, you want to get this book. And then you want to go on over to Facebook and join the
yeah,
group Dementia with Grace Caregiver Support Group. And you can find her on YouTube at Dementia with Grace. And she has new videos that are uploaded often. And so go on there, find that information, and then visit her website at www.dementiawithgrace.org or shoot an email at vicky@dementiawithgrace.org. And Vicky, you also do consultations
I do.
for individuals. And so let's talk a little bit about that. What type of services you provide? Because as a future caregiver, you're going to want to connect with, if it's not Vicky, somebody
Yeah,
at
yeah,
some point. And I would suggest that you kind of start early. Don't wait until you are overwhelmed in this process to reach out for help, whether or not. And I always put a plug in for the Alzheimer's Association. I'm
absolutely.
connected with them. Visit www.alz.org. Plethora of information out there that can help you. That's general information. It's information out there for caregivers, information out there regarding the stages. But by all means, Vicky is a great source. And you can see from just her being on this podcast and the information she's provided, she's very down to earth and does not mind answering your questions. One of the things I love too is the fact that, absolutely the consultation, there is, some charge for that, but there's questions that she answers right there in the Facebook group.
Yeah,
But by all means, get on it early. The earlier you can find the information, the earlier you can, know what dementia looks like, know what the stages look like when things start to happen. It makes it a lot easier for you, and you're not panicking or not, overwhelmed by the things that could happen. And we're not saying this for you to become fearful of
right,
what dementia looks like, by no means, because
right,
it's not something that you have to be fearful of.
right,
Caregiving, for me, it comes natural. It doesn't for everybody, but for me, it comes natural. And so the other side of that, and I'm not ever ashamed, and I do put this in on probably every platform I talk on, because it's me and what's worked for me. It has been my faith that sustains me in this. And so, that's my situation.
mhm,
But going in, you want to know what it looks like. And I advise, as those of you that are starting the journey, get as much information as you can.
yes,
Don't overwhelm yourself where you get too much and then you start to run away, but learn what you can
mhm,
about the disease so that you can be prepared. And I just happen to have fallen in love with Vicky's book.
thank you.
Vicky herself, a great person. And so I think she's a wonderful resource. So jump on the Facebook group. And the other thing I love about the group is the privacy.
Yes,
It's a private group. And so when you join the group, you don't have to worry about your information being shared outside of the group. You can get on the group and you can vent,
right,
and it stays right there in the group. It's kind of like, what goes on in Vegas stays in
right,
Vegas.
right.
And so that's that group. So you don't have to worry about, oh, are they going to see this? Unless they're a part of the group, they won't.
Right. That's exactly what I tell people. Now, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas unless your neighbor is also in Vegas and
Right.
sees you. That's the only way that a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I saw this on my Facebook wall. So does everybody see it?" And I'm like, "No, you see it because you're in the group."
Right.
Sometimes people get confused about that. And the other point that I want to make quickly is that not everyone with dementia has behaviors. Sometimes, maybe they do have a little bit of sundowning, but it's nothing, that's too disrupted, and maybe sometimes they have um, you know false accusations, but it may be, well, you have packed away all my china. It may be something like that. It's nothing that is, so, egregious as, you're having an affair, with the
Right.
mailman or something. There's a continuum of behaviors. So, um, ways to connect with me, just exactly what there's lots of ways to connect with me. And what I do on one-on-ones is basically what you need me to do. I can, I can troubleshoot if you're having, issues that you don't want to get out of control, like you're starting to see some issues that I just don't know why, she just is up during the middle of the night and packing and unpacking and packing and unpacking. And should I allow that to continue, or should I dissuade her from doing that? Where it's not anything that's hurting anything, but you don't want it to get where she's also packing a suitcase and then, heading out the door. We can troubleshoot things like that. We can talk about, whether or not uh, you're wondering if it's time for a facility. We can talk about that. I mean, that we can talk about anything you need to talk about. We can just vent. I have people that talk to me once a month just to call, and they just want to talk, and just say, I just need to get all this off my chest, and I don't feel like burdening anyone in my orbit. And I don't have Facebook, or I don't want to say all this on Facebook, maybe because my sister is in the group. I talk to people about family dynamics and about the fact that maybe they're not an only child, but they feel like an only child because nobody else is helping, and they want strategies, for how to deal with that. So, you know, I talk about behavior management. That's my focus, but I'm also a certified dementia practitioner. So I'm well versed in lots of different areas, and it's not too expensive, I don't think. For a one-on-one session, a 1 hour session, we can do Zoom, we can do a phone call, and you're not just paying for an hour, you're paying for 30 years of
Right.
experience. And so that's what I try to look at is, there's lots of people that you can talk to, and if I'm one that you choose, I'm more than happy to help you.
And Vicky, I know that you also have a number if they're not on social media,
Right.
and they want to call you directly. What is that number so they can get in contact with you?
It's 205-242-5415.
All
I'm in
right.
Alabama. If y'all can't guess, I'm in Alabama. That's an
And I love
Alabama,
the accent. I love the
that's an
accent.
Alabama area code. I did say I live in the heart of Dixie, and I do.
Yep. And so there you have it. That is Miss Vicky Noland Finch. And Vicky, before we get out of here, I want to ask you, I know you've given some already, but I want you to give some advice to a future dementia caregiver, somebody who, is just now getting into it. What advice would you give them as a future dementia caregiver?
I would say when you are faced with an unknown, when you are on the precipice of a new diagnosis and you don't know, um, what is about to happen, that you can look at a field of dandelions and you can see 1,000 weeds or 1,000 wishes. It is absolutely about your perspective. It is about your soul position. And when you can stand in your faith, stand in your experience, stand in your power, you can go forward and accept any challenge, knowing that you can do it, that whatever comes your way, as long as you have the right perspective, that you will be successful, that you will handle what comes your way, day in, day out, minute by minute, morning by morning, and you can do it.
There you have it, Vicky Noland Fitch. It's been a pleasure, Vicky, having you on today. I want to just say it one more time for those who are listening. In addition to her number, again, you can reach Vicky at on all of her social media platforms. And so you can go on Facebook if you have Facebook and find it at Dementia with Grace Caregiver Support Group. YouTube, Dementia with Grace. Again, episodes drop often. And so you want to go on there, hit subscribe when you go on there. Don't just view it, hit subscribe. So whenever a video is out there, you'll get a notification. And then on the website at www.dementiawithgrace.org, or you can email her at Vicky, Vicky, at dementiawithgrace.org. By all means, get in contact with her or search for information, however you do it. But we want you to be able to, find what it is you need so that, as I often say, you can keep going, keep caring, keep loving, keep pushing, all of that. At the end of the day, we just want you to be able to stand up, care, do what you have to do to make sure that you can keep going. So we love you. Absolutely, we do. We love you, and know that we are praying for you. You're not in this alone. There is a whole community of people out there that are pushing you on. Vicky used the boat. I often say we are all on the same journey. We may be on different roads, but it is the same journey. So you got people that are right here with you. All right. Until next time, you all, we love you. Keep going. Thank you. Dear future dementia caregiver, as you enter into this journey, I pray that you'll always remember to take it day by day, moment by moment. Some days you'll get it right, and some you may get it wrong. And when you do, Vicky stated it so well, each moment will always afford you an opportunity to do something different than what you did. Failure is a bruise. It's not a tattoo.